listening to the Oak Tree Project podcast, a safe place for women to discuss and speak out against sexual assault, harassment, and rape. We tackle some of society's toughest topics and challenge the status quo for you. Hi everyone, this is Lauren. Welcome to the first podcast for the Oak Tree Project. Really excited to be here. I have two amazing guests who I will let introduce themselves.
My name is Clarissa McMorrow. I'm a direct service advocate for the Rape Crisis Center of Medina and Summit County.
My name is Esther Miller, and I'm an outpatient therapist at the Nord Center, which is a community mental health clinic in Lorain County.
Wonderful. Thank you both for being here today.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, so obviously talking about this topic can be generally uncomfortable. Talking about sexual assault, harassment, rape, it's uncomfortable to talk about. It's a little uncomfortable to listen to sometimes. And so hopefully putting this out in the open, that's part of what the Oak Tree Project is trying to do. But along those same lines of this being hard to talk about, a lot of the times, and jump in guys, I mean, I think it's a cultural aspect of feeling like we can't speak about this, or we shouldn't, or it's so taboo, or you wouldn't want anyone to know that this has happened. I mean, have you guys dealt with situations where, Clarissa,
Absolutely. I think sometimes even, you even just working in the field, you meet somebody new and you say, I work at a rape crisis center. People are like, oh,
right.
Don't want to talk to you.
Yeah, I won't ask anymore.
Yeah, I think that those words like rape, harassment, assault, they're just scary words. And so we want to avoid scary topics, right? They just kind of feel like buzzkills on different conversations.
Right. But we want to talk about who you can talk to and where you can get answers and start getting into some of that. So I've always, coming from a background working at a suicide prevention helpline, we talked about defining sexual assault as any unwanted sexual contact. Clarissa, can you speak more to that though?
Sure, absolutely. I think defining it definitely can help people just start to understand it a little bit more. Sure. So sexual violence, sexual assault, we kind of use all these different terminologies. Right. But it is any unwanted sexual contact. And what we really talk about a lot and do a lot of education on is that consent is key. You want that continuous yes for, each sexual act.
Right. Right. So every new thing that happens, and I've heard people struggle with, they didn't feel like they could say no. And so that's a gray area.
I think I would even add that even just the words yes or no seem a little bit too black and white, right? I think that with this kind of topic, there's a lot of shame and there's a lot of confusion around, did I cause this, or or like, was this my fault? And so I think even the topic of consent feels a little gray,
right.
Because
or even saying consent, right? That feels like so stark. Like, yes, I'm giving you my consent. Like, this is like a law document. Right. Like, what? No one speaks like that when you're like hot and heavy on some.
Sure. And if you're in any kind of circumstance where you're attacked, your brain's not going to have time to be like, yes, no. You're just going to be in fight or flight mode. I think the core would be, how did that feel, and did you want that? And if you didn't, then that means that it was unwanted.
Right. And with each even group of experiences that we might put under a similar category, there are levels of severity that can happen. Yeah. And I've heard people like, well, it wasn't that bad. I had something happen, but it was my boyfriend, or it was someone that I knew, where I let them in my room. And it's like that doesn't make it any less legitimate. That doesn't mean that you still don't have feelings surrounding this. I mean, right, Clarissa, you've heard this.
Absolutely. And I think when anyone hears the word like rape or sexual assault, they typically think of, it was a stranger, someone who jumped out and attacked me. And I know statistically, I think it's around like 90% that sexual assault survivors know their assailant. That's more common than not.
So talking more about defining this, Esther, if you can speak to, I guess, from the counseling point of view, why people might feel like we have to define this, or why, or even why someone would not want to define it.
Yeah, I think that it kind of boils down to sort of some basic understanding of how our like brains work as human beings, right? So how we learn new information is that we categorize stuff. I think when it comes into sexual assault, rape, harassment, that kind of stuff, we often want to categorize it so we understand what we experienced, right?
Yeah.
But doing that is really complicated, and it's not comfortable, right? And so sometimes people find that giving it a name is helpful. Other people don't want to talk about it because giving it a name is too powerful, right? So that's kind of where it gets a little complicated.
I mean, just going back to the cultural aspect of it, if you give it the name, sometimes you feel like you have such a stigma around you saying, like, breaking it down, like, I was raped. And so that can be really scary for people. So
I think anything that touches on any sort of core experience of not feeling safe, not feeling cared for, feeling alone, anything that touches on that would count.
And so just giving yourself permission to say, I feel this about this situation.
And I think, like you said at the beginning, it's an uncomfortable thing to talk about. And I think it's an uncomfortable thing when you've experienced, sexual violence or sexual assault or unwanted sexual contact, and you're like, who do I talk to about this? Or maybe you go to your support person and you don't get that support you're looking for. I think that can have a huge silencing effect on you as well.
So talking about, if we don't learn definitions about this experience that happened to us, we're not going to call it rape, or we're not going to call it sexual assault. And it might be us passively doing this, but this is a way to protect ourselves, right? And so we don't have to process it sometimes. Or you're getting these cultural influences of, I went to a college and they were like, no, people don't get raped here. That doesn't happen. And it's like, what? Just because maybe you're not calling it that.
Yeah, I think that it's one thing to talk about it in this podcast, right? But when someone's experienced it, I think no one's even really aware that they're doing that, right?
Yeah.
I think the instinctual thing for our like brains to do is to try and protect.
Yep, absolutely.
And so if we've experienced something that is somewhat traumatic, our brain is going to want to try and turn that off, because in order to get up and go to school or go to work, you can't be thinking about that stuff.
Right.
So we automatically try and just push it away just in order to survive. And that's not something that we're doing consciously. It's something that we're just doing just to get through the day.
It's that like biological response to trauma.
It's just an automatic response. So I think, we can talk about, is that cultural? Is that biological? I think maybe the answer is yes to all of those things, right? But I think it's important that when we don't cause abuse to happen to us, and we also don't, purposely try and, suppress. It's just kind of stuff that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can go on living your everyday without being weighed down completely by these feelings. And now, say you are on to, maybe I do need to take action. Maybe I should start sorting through this. This is heavy stuff.
I might just say, start to notice how you're feeling and notice what's going on. Even just things like if you're having trouble sleeping, or you're finding you want to just stay by yourself, or kind of you don't want to talk to anybody, you're feeling like it's harder to leave the house. Those are just kind of things to kind of notice, right? That maybe it's time to find someone you can talk to who's safe. And being able to find that safe person is really important.
And if I can just add in, if you're listening to this and you're thinking that maybe this sounds like you, maybe this is something you've experienced, I just want to emphasize that what happened to you was not your fault, and that there are people out there, safe people who you can talk to and provide, will be there for us to support you through this. So
So everybody, thanks so much for listening to our first episode here. Please tune in again soon. Remember to visit theoaktreeproject.com. Here you can submit your own story and listen to more podcasts like this. We will have Clarissa and Esther joining us for a couple more episodes. So make sure to check back. Thank you too.
Thanks.